Keep your friends close and all that stuff. And your enemies closer, or in this case, I don't know. Okay, good morning, everyone. Sorry we're a bit late. Now, early on during the transition, Senate Republicans said that they hoped they could confirm as many as 7 cabinet nominees on Inauguration Day. They said that's what President Obama got, so we should get the same treatment, they said. But over the last several weeks, Republicans have made a mockery of the cabinet hearing process, trying to jam through nominees in truncated hearings, nominees with serious conflicts of interest and ethical issues unresolved, and without giving senators, and more importantly, the American people, a fair chance to question and hear from these nominees. If there was ever a group of the cabinet nominees that cry out for rigorous scrutiny, it's this one. The President-elect's cabinet is a swamp cabinet full of billionaires and bankers that have conflicts of interest and ethical lapses as far as the eye can see. Congressman Mulvaney failed to pay taxes on a household worker, the exact same issue that caused past nominees to withdraw. Congressman Price is facing serious scrutiny for trading stock with one hand and pushing legislation to boost the stock with the other. Betsy DeVos has refused to pay an old election fine. And by the way, the fact that her hearing was so appalling to so many Americans, 15 million people. We sent out just a video of a couple of the questions. 15 million people have seen it. And if you go look on the social media, Trump supporters are saying, why the heck did he nominate her? Rex Tillerson has refused to recuse himself from matters relating to ExxonMobil for the length of his term. Amazing. Head of the biggest oil company, and after 1 year he can do things to help it again. He's worked there decades. And just this morning, we've learned that Steve Mnuchin tried to hide his holdings in the Cayman Islands from the Senate Finance Committee. The list goes on, and every day there's another report of a major ethical lapse among the nominees for the cabinet, the swamp cabinet. The president-elect isn't draining the swamp with his cabinet picks. He's filling it up, contrary to everything he promised during his campaign. These issues and others deserve to be thoroughly and rigorously reviewed by the Senate. Senate Democrats asked for multiple rounds of questions, multiple days of hearings, outside witnesses, and to have ample time to review a nominee's completed paperwork before a hearing is held, particularly in light of the fact that so many of these folks have such complicated paperwork you can't just review it in a day. I would remind my Republican friends that the only real billionaire in President Obama's cabinet, Penny Pritzker, took 6 months to clear her ethical conflicts and file papers. So, we have made some progress on a few fronts. But the more we learned about the nominees, the more important a thorough, fair process became. And the more it became clear, Republicans were simply trying to jam through these nominees out of sight of the American people. They're not really proud of this cabinet. And so they want the hearings to be as quick, as short, and as bunched up as they can be. Even though back in 2009, Republicans asked Democrats not to have any hearings before the Office of Government Ethics had signed off on a given nominee, Senate Republicans did exactly that with Betsy DeVos. Senator Alexander stymied members from asking critical questions of both Mrs. DeVos and Mr. Price. Some members of the public were kept out of hearings. One report was there were only 7 pub seats for the public in the hearing, I believe, of Mr. Pruitt. From top to bottom, it's clear Republicans were attempting to orchestrate a cover-up of the president-elect's swamp cabinet. Senate Democrats and the American people won't stand for it. So the inauguration is tomorrow. And here is what we are prepared to do. Senators on both sides of the aisle have expressed support for the President-elect's key national security nominees. We expect to be able to vote on General Kelly and General Mattis tomorrow, and look forward to beginning the debate on Congressman Pompeo in hopes that he can also receive a quick vote. It's possible that some other non-controversial nominees could be considered relatively quickly. But from there, we intend to have a full and rigorous debate on the President-elect's remaining nominees. Senate Republicans did not want to have a full debate on the merits of these nominees in committee, but they should be prepared to do so on the floor of the United States Senate. I understand Republicans are saying they wouldn't have chosen any of Obama's nominees, but allowed them to be confirmed. Let me be clear. Democrats will allow the confirmations of and votes for nominees who would not have been chosen by our party. But what we will not support are nominees who are so extreme in their viewpoints or their noncompliance with ethics laws and practice that they have demonstrated themselves to be unfit. We will not be dilatory for the sake of it, and we're hopeful that nominees will fully answer the remaining questions that their hearings have raised, and that some will even come back for another round of questioning. That type of cooperation could speed things up on the floor. We'd much prefer to have full questions with these nominees in hearings, because they're there. But if we can't, the floor will be the place we have to bring to light the key issues that I've mentioned. If Republicans continue to stonewall and cover up the serious issues that many of these nominees are trying to avoid, they should be prepared to have those debates on the floor of the full Senate. And I would make just one final point. If Republicans continue down this path, they're going to dramatically lower the ethical standards in government that we've always had. Standards that were upheld by all previous administrations, Obama and Bush and Clinton and H.W. Bush and Reagan. A dramatic lowering of standards in a country we all love, where we try to hold ourselves up to higher standards. If the cabinet nominees are confirmed with Republican support, when Republicans opposed previous nominees for lesser ethical lapses, our ethical standards will wither. And that will be one of Donald Trump's first legacies as president. It will make clear that conflicts of interest and ethical lapses are totally acceptable, from the president to his cabinet and on down. The political price the new administration pays for that will come down the road, for sure. The conflicts of interest and conflicts between the cabinet members and the president-elect on key issues will cause large future problems for this administration, even if all these nominees are confirmed. One of the reasons the president-elect enters office with the lowest approval ratings in history is his failure to drain the swamp and his decision to fill it up with these cabinet picks. So there are good reasons our Republican colleagues should oppose some of these nominees, and we will be certainly trying to persuade them over the next few weeks as the controversial nominees come to the floor. The President can take action. Senate Republicans can take action. They can oppose these picks if they have the courage to do so and change the course we're on. I don't know if any of these cabinet picks will be defeated. If a few Republicans do the right thing, they could, and that's still a real possibility. But it is crystal clear that the President-elect is starting off by governing from the hard right and without any concern for conflict of interest or ethics.
Senator, two things. How long do you think you can drag this process out? And what do you say to Republicans who argue that you're exaggerating some of the ethics problems with these nominees for political purposes?
Okay, first, we're not trying to drag anything out. These cabinet nominees have a huge, huge say over the lives of tens of millions of Americans. And to see who they are and what they feel and what they intend to do for a few days before they take office is eminently reasonable, and I think most Americans would agree. And if our Republican colleagues think that these things aren't so bad, why they rush everything through? Why did they not submit papers fully in time?
Senator,
Go ahead, Manu.
Rex Tillerson may get a vote in the Senate Foreign Relations Committee on Monday. Republicans are talking about moving him to the floor even if he does not have the votes. I'm wondering, will you allow a quick vote on the floor for Rex Tillerson? And if not, I mean, why should the president not have his top diplomat in the post at the time?
Well, here's the bottom line. Rex Tillerson has huge problems. I was appalled when he refused to recuse himself for all matters ExxonMobil during his whole term. I mean, ExxonMobil had so many dealings with Russia, where we're now seeing Russia has causing lots of problems for this country, and he won't recuse himself? Oh no, there are serious problems with Rex Tillerson. There'd be problems of having an oil magnate in general, but one who has been so unwilling to understand that his previous job and his present job, his future job, if he gets it, will have conflicts of interest, and he should try to be cleaner than Caesar's wife. He needs thorough examination.
So you won't allow.
Well, and I would just say one other thing. You all know how the Senate rules work. This is not just up to me. I will give, if any one of my colleagues wants time to question on the floor, to make statements on the floor, they have the right to do that. Yes.
Just this morning, though, Trump's team said that you're playing politics, that you're intentionally holding up these nominees and preventing them from having their...
Very easy for President-elect to solve it. Tell every one of his nominees to submit their full papers and give us ample time, it's a day or two, to question them fully. We have not gotten that opportunity with many, many of the members. So the real onus is on the President-elect and the Republicans in the Senate. We're not going to tolerate rushing these very important nominees through when they have so many questions raised about them. All they have to do, give us the information, give us the paperwork, and they'll get through much quicker. And that's what I proposed to both Vice President Pence and Leader McConnell 2 weeks ago. And I said we can move them all through rather quickly. Just give us a good hearing schedule. Yes.
In your view, how is Mulvaney different than Timothy Geithner? Much more.
It's quite different. The analogy with Mulvaney is with Tom Daschle. They were similar. For years, each had household employees who they didn't pay taxes for. The household employee is right in front of you. You know you have to pay taxes. It's pretty obvious it was being avoided. Geithner had some kind of financial thing that he didn't pay, but you could make the argument he didn't know about. It's similar to the argument people are making about Wilbur Ross not knowing one thing and big expensive amount of financial wealth. Yes.
What do you make of the last cabinet pick that Donald Trump would have Sonny Perdue for agriculture?
Don't know much. I'm going to study it, but I don't know much.
What would you like to
Yes.
Can you just clarify, so you're seeing Kelly and Mattis getting cleared on tomorrow, and then beginning debate on...
That's not tomorrow. Yes, tomorrow. Tomorrow's Friday. We have a funny calendar. Yes. I thought today was Tuesday or Wednesday. Time flies when you're having fun.
It sounded like you said there could be some other confirmations tomorrow. Is that...
I said there could be some very soon, either tomorrow or early next week.
Still negotiating people like Chow, Haley...
Well, I'm not going to get into names, but we are still negotiating people.
And then you see beginning a debate on Pompeo, so maybe...
There are a good number of members who have serious statements they want to make about Pompeo and questions they at least want to ask all of our colleagues to consider before the vote. Whether that can be done on Friday remains to be seen. But if he's not done on Friday, my guess is he could get done on Monday.
Senator, do you have to just be more clever in your tactics because of the rules change under Senator Reid? Is that part of what you're trying to do?
No, we have to do the right thing here. These nominees, whether there was a rules change or not, should get a clear vetting by the American people. Certainly it would have been easier to defeat them had the rules not changed. But I still have some faith when my Republican colleagues see what's here that they're going to cringe, and maybe some of them will vote against these folks.
Senator Schumer, can you talk for just a second?
Did you get a question already?
Not today.
Okay.
Thank you.
I try to mix it up.
We appreciate that. Can you walk through how you're okay with Kelly tomorrow and with Mattis tomorrow, and also would you allow voice votes on those?
No, okay.
If you go back 20 years ago,
Yeah, I think a good number of my colleagues have asked for recorded vote, and I think they're entitled to it. That won't slow things down very much. I looked at their records, and I relied on advice of some colleagues on both sides of the aisle who knew both of these people quite well, and I think they'd be very good nominees. Yeah, Jerry.
Senator, do you think that Congressman Price, his pattern of investing in health stocks, do you think that that's disqualifying? And in specific, how concerned are you about his participation in a private placement with Congressman Collins?
Look,
on a health
it cries out, what Congressman Price did cries out for investigation. Having invested in a stock that's a very narrow stock. It's not like Johnson & Johnson. It dealt with hip and knee implants. And then in a week later introducing very narrow legislation that would have reduced regulations on that very company. That cries out for an investigation. Do we know he violated the law? No. But any prosecutor worth his salt, knowing that fact pattern, would want to investigate it.
What do you think of
Collins? I don't know enough about. So
he was basically giving stock advice.
Yeah, I'd have to study his role a little bit more. He's not up for nomination here. Yes.
Senator Schumer, basically the line from Democrats in the Senate regarding your House colleagues, 60 of them so far, decision to boycott is, we respect them, but we're going to be going to support the democratic process. How are Democrats going to feel if this comes back to them when they win the next election?
Look, I respect each person for making. I think this is a decision that people ponder and is of conscience, and I respect what each person did, and each person has to weigh it.
What kind of message do you think that sends about supporting the democratic process?
Well, I'll leave it at what I said.
Senator Kerry is not on your list of 8, but are you comfortable with a member of your own Democratic leadership, Senator Manchin, taking the extra step to introduce a
Look,
nominee?
Senator Manchin felt that Governor Perry would be a good nominee, and he sat next to him. I don't have a problem with that.
Last question.
Senator, specifically, which of these nominees do you want additional days and questions of hearing?
Well, we sent a list early on of 8 nominees that were controversial, and at least those. But, there are some. I know today that Mr. Spicer said Carson is not controversial when he doesn't know a thing about housing policy. That cries out for a more serious discussion.
Do you feel Senator Sessions' hearing, for example, was not long enough?
Senator Sessions actually was one of the few people have serious issue problems with him. But he did submit his papers in time. It was scheduled in advance, and we did get 2 days of hearings with the opportunity to question Senator Sessions on the second day. So his hearings were one of the few that went decently well. Having said that, there are so many issue positions that Senator Sessions has that many of my colleagues want to continue the debate on the floor. Yeah, he said last week. He's the boss, You better. Thank you, everybody. Nope, sorry.
All right, guys. So we're gonna play the confirmation hearing for nominee Rick Perry or Stephen Mnuchin. I don't know. Just press 1 if you want Stephen Mnuchin, or press 2 if you want Rick Perry. I'll play either of them. You guys can stay on the chat, and make sure to switch those thumbs down for thumbs up now. Now that this fucking triggered idiot can shut the hell up and go back into his cave. So press 1 if you want Treasury Secretary nominee Stephen Mnuchin, or if you want to see the Energy Secretary nominee Rick Perry. All right, so it looks like a lot of people want to see Rick Perry, so I guess that's the one that we will pick for now. When the inauguration stuff for today, schedule for today starts, we will shut this stream down, so make sure that you subscribe. And we'll put up a stream a few minutes after that. Make sure that you guys also click on the bell so you can get the notification if you're already subscribed. So let's go to the confirmation hearing of Energy Secretary nominee Rick Perry.
Of WAPA customers in Arizona are rural co-ops and irrigation districts that really need to keep their electric rates low. They've been concerned with transparency at WAPA, that some of the spending that's been going on and some of the unobligated trade balances, unobligated balances that they have, and why those haven't resulted in lowering of rates. Just yesterday, I sat down with WAPA Administrator Gabriel for an update on their unobligated balances and the numerous internal audits to ensure fiscal responsibility. Can you commit to work with me to make sure that Arizona customers get the lowest rates possible from WAPA?
Senator, we will commit to work with you to make sure that the Department of Energy follows the statutes and the laws and the Constitution, and not go outside those bounds. And if you ever see the agency participating in something like that, I know I can expect a phone call from you.
All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. As you know, Arizona is home to the nation's largest nuclear plant. And so obviously the nuclear policies of the department are of interest to any of us in Arizona. The nuclear power industry needs a resolution to the long-term storage problem that we have. What will DOE do under your leadership to bring some kind of resolution to that issue?
Senator, as I've made in some earlier remarks, both to the ranking member and to the members as a whole, that the time of kicking the can down the road on dealing with this issue, my goal will be that those days are over, that we can have a thoughtful conversation, a productive conversation, a conversation where that the citizens of your state and those that have these 35 different states that are repositories today, not by their desire, but by the inaction of the federal government over the course of the decades, that we can, in fact, number one, by making good decisions here, looking at alternatives, by making a real commitment to clean up the environment in these states and truly find both the interim and the long-term storage answers to this extremely difficult situation.
All right. Thank you. I'm encouraged to see that research is being done around the U.S. in terms of the future of nuclear energy, new technology, particularly the small modular reactors. In what ways can DOE work with the private sector? I know there are companies, New Scale Power, and obviously you need to work with the Nuclear Regulatory Commission on this. How can DOE further this research and speed the adoption of some of these new technologies?
And again, I think my historical engagement with universities as a governor, and obviously the relationship with, I think there are 11 senators who were governors, and their counterparts in their states. Hopefully we can find not just the private sector and DOE, but also a third partner that I think is very important, and that's our universities and the scientists and men and women that are there. So I find the entire concept of the small modular reactors as a fascinating, as one of the alternatives we need to have a conversation with. But again, I will go back to say that none of these are going to move forward with the expedition that we would like until we find the answer and are willing to address this issue of dealing with the waste that we have in the states today.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Flake. Senator Franken.
Governor,
Senator.
thank you so much for coming into my office. Did you enjoy meeting me?
I hope you were as much fun on that dais as you were on your couch.
Well,
may I rephrase that, sir?
please, please, please. Oh, my Lord. Oh, my Lord.
Well, I think we found our Saturday Night Live soundbite.
Let's move on. One of the fun things on the couch was when you said that the shale energy boom owed a lot to the Department of Energy. And this is something I think my colleagues on the other side have almost gotten sick of me saying. But you seem to, you make a great validator. And you will, and we talked about this, so I know that you agree that the Department of Energy was an enormous factor in the shale boom. Is that right?
I would suggest to you that there were technologies that were moved forward at the DOE that both our universities and the private sector then took and implemented together that allowed for the shale revolution to occur. But there, the private sector had a substantial amount to do with that. George Mitchell, who was a Texas geologist, was a great example of an individual who heard scientists, and I'm sure his private sector friends time after time say, you're wasting your time and wasting your money. But he believed in it. And I give as much credit to him as I do the DOE, but I think the DOE has a role to play.
Well, as a matter of fact, the vice president of his company, Dan Stewart, said this, and I quote, DOE started it and other people took the ball and ran with it. You cannot diminish DOE's involvement. And the reason I bring this up, not just to lord that over my colleagues who doubted me, but also to just point to the importance of research from DOE in solving all these problems that we have. And that's why these reports, I hope these reports on cuts in DOE aren't true. Things in the new administration seem to be fluid, shall I say. I want to go to climate change. As we discussed in my office, I believe that climate change is an existential threat and one of the most serious challenges of our time. In your 2010 book, you claim, quote, we have been experiencing a cooling trend. Well, it was just announced yesterday, as Senator Heinrich said, that this is the hottest year on record. The year before was also the hottest year on record. The year before that, first time in 3 years in a row, have been the hottest year on record. In 2014, you said, quote, I don't believe that we have the settled science by any sense of the imagination. Calling CO2 a pollutant is doing a disservice to the country, and I believe a disservice to the world. Now, I see in your testimony that your views have been evolving on this, and you note that man is responsible for some climate change. How much climate change do you think is the science shows is due to human activity?
Senator, far from me to be sitting before you today and claiming to be a climate scientist. I will not do that.
I don't think you're ever going to be a climate scientist, but you're going to be head of the Department of Energy.
That's correct. And I know how to hire a really good scientist.
Well, 97% of climate scientists say that this is real and is that we are going to be approaching at the end of the century 3.5 Celsius increases in temperature which would be disastrous. And I don't want that for my grandchildren. And let me put that number, that 97%, in context. A recent survey found that only 95% of scientists are sure that cigarettes cause cancer. So it seems to me that science on climate change is pretty definitive. So I just don't want, and I know my time is out, I don't want this idea of the economy and addressing climate change are at odds at all. As you saw in your state, people stay in your communities that have wind. Those towers are big. They're tall. Only young people can go up those towers. And you keep young people in your community. Yes, sir. And we owe it to, I don't know if you have grandchildren yet. I know your daughter.
A little early for that. They were just married in October.
Yes, too early. See, I'm not a mathematician. My time is over. It's gone. It's done. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Need a little levity every now and again. Let's go to Senator Risch for some more.
We're going to ignore that, Senator. Governor, thank you for being willing to do this. First of all, you earlier apologized for raiding for businesses in other states when you were governor. You know, there's 4 governors, former governors on this committee, 2 and 2. And in that regard, I would say you don't ever have to apologize for that. We have all sinned in that regard in our former lives, some quite successfully, I might add. So no apology is necessary. You know, arguably, you're taking over arguably the most complex and broad-reaching agency within the government. Now, you might say that DOE's maybe got a broader span in different ways, but as far as reaching Americans' lives, this is probably as broad-reaching as it gets, and it is incredibly complex. Your soon-to-be predecessor was a nuclear physicist, as you know, and we actually got along with him quite well. He was very intimidating when he started talking about nuclear physics. But in any event, my contention would be you don't have to be a nuclear physicist to run this agency. As Senator Manchin adequately described what happens when you become governor, nobody hands you a manual. Your success or failure depends upon your own ability to manage an incredibly broad-reaching range of services and issues for the people of your state. And it all depends on the people that you bring around you, obviously, because you've got to have experts around you. And believe me, in this agency you're taking on, you're going to need lots and lots of experts to help you do.
All right, guys, we're going to prepare for some inauguration stuff that is going to happen in just a few hours. So if you are new to our community, we encourage you to subscribe. If you are already subscribed, we thank you and we welcome you to the community. Make sure that you go to our main channel and click on the bell right next to where the subscribe button is so you can get notifications of when we go live. Inauguration starts today. It goes on tomorrow for his swearing and his inaugural speech, and it finishes off on Saturday. So we're going to get ready. We'll go live in just a few hours, and again, subscribe so you can get the notification of when we go live, and we hope to see you on the chat. Thanks.